Good morning. The other day I was driving to work and there were two cars in front of me and one car cut off the other one. Well, the one that got cut off didn't like it and honked his horn really loud and really long. Well, the one that cut him off felt bad. Probably they cut him off, but she didn't like to be honked at, and so she honked back. And it started a comical series of honks back and forth. They literally went down the road and they were just trying to honk back and forth at each other, trying to get the last honk in. And sometimes I think that's the way we live. We try to get the last honk in. You see, it's about us. It's about how we feel, not really caring about the other person. Colossians chapter 3 talks about how we need to care about the other person, not exploit them for our own physical needs, not to abuse them with our hatred or malice or rage, and not to reject them because we don't like who they are or where they're from, or we're not willing to forgive them because maybe they did do something to hurt us. And in this process, we try to get the last honk in because we want to be taken care of. But you see, Colossians chapter 3 talks about we can't live this way. And in this chapter, it talks about how we're all the same, how there's male and female, or whether it's Greek or Gentile, or Jew or Gentile, or whoever, we're all the same. And it lists something really interesting. The Scythians. Where does that come from? Well, I talk about that in the sermon a little bit. Watch this.
How many ever read that and thought, why would he put Scythian in there? What is that about? Well, they were known as the cruelest, the meanest. More murders committed by them. They were a bad bunch. They were the Al-Qaeda of the day. You know what I'm saying? They were really, really, really bad. And what is he saying? These were all sins of rejection. I don't like you because you're one of them. I don't like you. These are sins of bias. These are sins of unwillingness to forgive. And there were people in the church that were of this race, of this one, even Scythians that had got redeemed and were forgiven. And the rest of the church are going, okay, you can sit there, but I'm going to sit over here. Yeah, don't let him take up the offering. I mean, it's easy to fall into that. But all these things cause us to be distracted from God, what God really is trying to do. If you're going to grow, you're going to have to choose more life and less of your life. And that means forgiving. That means putting others before you instead of my needs. I got this need, or I deserve to be angry. You don't know what he did. You don't know what she did. You don't know how they hurt me. They should have taken care of me, and they abused me. And we hold this unforgiveness, but all that does is it keeps us distracted.
I was recently reminded of a man who lived on a very dangerous corner. Cars would go by too fast. And very often, because they were going too fast, they would not make the corner, they would hit the curve, and there would be terrible wrecks. The man complained to the city again and again and again, but the city just never seemed to get around to do anything about it. And every time there was a really terrible wreck with one or two cars, he would run out of his house, run down his hill, down to the street, and do what he could to help. He would help people. He would even bring people into his home and let them sit there until the emergency teams and the ambulances and everything arrived and that they could help. So he got to the point where he decided, you know what, I'm just tired of this. I'm just tired of they're not going to do anything about it. So if they don't care, I don't care. And so when he heard the wreck, he wouldn't even go down. He wouldn't open his door, wouldn't turn on his light. He just let them be. One particular day, he heard a very terrible wreck. It sounded like 2 or 3 cars. But he refused to even look out the window. And then, as he sat there, he heard a knock on the door. And he went and he opened the door. And there was an officer there. And the officer asked him, "Sir, do you know?" And he gave him the name. And he said, "Yes, I know him. He's my son." He said, "Well, he was just involved in a wreck right out front of your house." You see, sometimes we get to the point where we think, well, this hurts me. Or I don't want to do this. Or they hurt me. I don't want to forgive them. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to help. And all that does is it works against the growth that God is trying to put in our life and the things that God's trying to do in our life. Colossians chapter 3 teaches us how we have to be able to care. If we're going to grow, if we're going to make a difference in someone's life, that means that we're going to have to be willing to forgive, even when we don't want to forgive. That means we have to be willing to have less of us and more of them. And it costs us something when we do less. It costs us something when we put ourselves down so someone else can be taken care of, so someone else can have the benefit of forgiveness or our help or our kindness or our mercy that God pours through us. And that makes all the difference in the world. Today, as you go through your day, I want you to remember that. I want you to remember how God has forgiven us. And because He's forgiven us, we can forgive others, no matter what they've done, no matter where they're at. It doesn't mean we condone what they do. It just means that we're willing to say, you know what? I'll help. I'll get involved. I'll do more than look out my window. I'll go down the hill. Because it might be someone that you can make an impact in their lives. This morning for our scripture, I want us to look at a prayer that's probably the most popular prayer in the entire Bible. You might be familiar with it. You might even have it memorized. In fact, people that have never been to church or don't have anything to do with God would know this verse. And we find it in Matthew chapter 6, beginning in verse 9. And it simply says this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Now watch this. And forgive us our debts as, I want us to pause in there and think about this. Forgive us our debts as, think about that word now. Forgive our debts as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Imagine what this world would be like if people didn't just quote this verse or quote this prayer and they just use it as just something that was said, but actually lived it. How different would this world be if you lived it? If we actually forgave people like God has forgiven us. It's hard to even imagine everything that God has done for us, how He sent His Son to die for us. We have been forgiven so much. How could we not forgive others? How could we not hold a resentment or be unforgiving to other people, even when they hurt us, even when it's their fault? Imagine what this world would be like. Now, imagine what your day will be like. If you live this day saying, God, I won't hold grudges. I will forgive. I will give it freely because freely you've forgiven me. I want you to look at this passage. I want you to reread these words. And when you do, let it be something that's in your heart, not just in your head.